Hey, team players, welcome to another edition of Local Football Flavor, breaking down fantasy football with the eye on what happens in real life. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs because, Bob, at the end of the day, how the Chiefs use them is how your fantasy team is going to relate. And that's what this episode is about what will the Chiefs do. And when we're talking Kansas City and fantasy football, there's two names you start with, regardless of what it is. It's Mahomes and Kelsey. The Chiefs go as far as they go. But they have identified this offseason that they're looking to run the ball more, and they are doing some evidence that shows that it might actually mean it. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, I actually want to start the conversation with Pacheco, because Pacheco here is their running back who kind of took over in the middle of the year last year. Mm-hmm. So as we're looking at last year's projections to this year's, I really think ESPN has drastically missed the boat when you look at their projections on Pacheco. Last year, he already had 170 carries, and ESPN saying he's only going to get 30 more. That's like a game and a half's worth when he only played really from week 10 on. Like, I see Pacheco being the fact that he's going so late in drafts and that Kansas City is looking to lean more on the running game as a potential league winner from the mid rounds, because he's got the power. He only had 5 touchdowns last year. And in Kansas City, it's a little hard to gauge because they do that crazy stuff with Mahomes and Kelsey. But even at the 7 touchdown mark, just based upon his extra usage, he's probably going to be 1,000 down back. It's a team that's going to have the lead. They're going to have to run out the clock. Isaiah Pacheco is, to me, one of the most underscored players in terms of what he will do in the NFL, and that's how you win fantasy games. You find guys that are just flat out marked up wrong, and Kansas City, to me, has 2 of them, with Pacheco being the biggest.
Yeah, I can't really fight you on that one, Joe. But Isaiah Pacheco is one of those guys where when you really look at where you can get him, he's one of the reasons why a lot of people are comfortable taking wide receivers early, because Pacheco's getting drafted in the 6th, 7th round. So you can potentially build a really insurmountable lead on some of your league mates by taking guys like Olave, Jamar Chase early, knowing that you have the opportunity to get Pacheco. Now, the only real knock on Pacheco here is he has McKinnon, who's getting drafted on average at 128, and then a looming but way, way, way behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And so with McKinnon took a lot of that passing down work from Pacheco. McKinnon had 9 touchdowns last year, and all of that was PPR. So he was scoring at a very high output when he came back in later in the season. And so both of these guys, as the season kind of got moving along a little bit more, started getting better and better and better. You look at his stats here and you say, well, he's averaged 4.5 yards per carry. So that is tremendous, behind a decent offensive line again for
3rd best offensive line of football, according to Pro Football Focus.
Kansas City.
That's what I mean. They want to run the ball.
They're going to run the ball. And here's the best part about this is that when you look at it and you say, well, Patrick Mahomes threw the ball a lot last year. Absolutely, that was 100% true. But they also ran the ball a lot. And so, yes, their rushing play percentage wasn't high, but their rushes, their rushing yards per rush was extremely high.
Yeah.
And so you look at it and you say, well, 115 rushing yards per game, that's not great. But what's really great about Pacheco and McKinnon, for that matter, is that red zone. The red zone is going to be there. So there's always a chance that these 2 guys get the opportunity to run it in the red zone. And those are high quality runs. You want those on your team. Pacheco's not going to break your ankles on anything. McKinnon might. But when you say, okay, what's good about this Kansas City offense? Well, if you're not going to take Kelsey in the 1st round and Mahomes in the 2nd and 3rd, Pacheco seems to be a dream player for your team. Whether you go wide receiver heavy early or whether you go running back heavy early. It doesn't really matter. He should be a piece on your team.
Yeah, he should probably be going in the 4th or 5th rounds, and you guys are going to be able to snag him so much later.
And there's an injury question. He might start. Camp has started. There's talk about the pup list for camp. Just keeping him healthy, and I see it as being something to watch out for. But nothing seems to be. You're not losing anything if you take Pacheco in the 6th or 7th round because the other backs in that round that you can take
are useless.
They have similar downsides and not as similar upsides. And there's reasons why you would want to draft all of them. But Pacheco, man, like 6th, 7th round, pencil him in. That's a really good player at that value.
And the other person in Kansas City's offense that is getting completely missed is Sky Moore. And the reason for this is that there is this notion that small school guy coming from the MAC shouldn't be getting respect over Kadarius Toney. Well, I can tell you outright, Kadarius Toney is not what they call an intelligent, anything, but specifically route runner. And he does not run the specific offense that is demanded out there in Kansas City. He just kind of flutters around. When you watch him on film, it's textbook who not to do to run routes. Sky Moore is the opposite, and he's not that far athletically behind him. So I believe without a doubt that Sky Moore is going to have the second most targets of any person on Kansas City's offense. And you're able to get Sky Moore astronomically low in drafts, knowing that he's the number 2 target from Patrick Mahomes. He's a player with amazing upside potential in an offense that's very hard to gauge as a rookie. Sky Moore to me is another late guy home run for you. And not to bury the lead or anything, I still believe Kelsey should go 1-1. Bob has sold me on that. So you look at this Kansas City offense. Yes, they have a much harder schedule than they had last year. They are going to be in a lot of games that they are going to have to produce points.
So here's the thing.
And that's even better for investing in this offense because they will.
Well, Kelsey is going to cost you a lot. He is arguably the safest and best player on the board. And, we've talked about saying safest. It's that his floor is higher than a lot of others, and his ceiling is astronomical when you think about it. Patrick Mahomes threw the ball 748 times last year, 507 completions. When you look at the current roster, you say that we all think Travis Kelsey is gonna pocket at least 150
of the targets, just like last year.
So that's a lot of other targets to go around on this roster that's made up of Rishi Rice, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, and I believe Scantling is still there again. Now, when you look at what Sky Moore did last year, 32 receptions. You look at Kadarius Toney last year, 16 receptions. You look at Scantling last year, 42 receptions. Rice, he's a rookie, so what's going to happen? Well, when you say, well, where's Patrick Mahomes going to go with the ball? Primarily, he's going to go to the ball with Kelsey. But there's a very, very good chance that Sky Moore being drafted in the 15th, 16th rounds, sometimes 13th or 14th when you do a sleeper draft, because some leagues on sleeper don't go down so far. Sky Moore is such an incredible value. And you want a piece of Kansas City's offense. Even if Chad Henne were to be the quarterback or an unnamed quarterback were to be the quarterback, you are still in good shape because that this team is still going to produce the way that they just work under Andy Reid is phenomenal. Now, the only thing here is that will the loss of the offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, play a role in this?
No.
I don't think it will because Mahomes is at this point.
It's also Reid's offense.
Well, Mahomes is basically Brett Favre-ing it at this point in time, Ben Roethlisbergering it at this point in time.
Just without the interceptions.
He's so good.
So good. He's the best player in football. There's not even close.
Good to the point where you don't even have to practically tell him what to do. He just kind of understands.
And this offense is so intricate. And you look at the 3 players we really highlighted here. Mahomes, Kelsey, and Moore. They're all intellectually on the top of their game. Kelsey and Moore are amazing at route running, right where he wants them to be. And I believe at the end of the day, Kansas City is going to regret the Toomey acquisition. But if you look back at what they actually gave up for him, it was basically nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And they have invested in 2 receivers. Moore, second-round pick last year. Rice, second-round pick this year. To me, that says when it's all said and done, those 2 are going to be the future in the post-Kelsey era, whenever that does start. But for this year, I can't be going with the rookie, and I can't be going with the guy who doesn't run routes. So give me Kelsey, Moore, and Pacheco. I'd take them all around early if I could. But for Kelsey, that means, 1-1. And I think Kelsey really honestly deserves to be at 1-1 when you consider the fact that Mark Andrews and Hawkinson both are now fighting for serious amounts of their target share. Kelsey isn't. Kelsey's historically produced. I think he's going to be better than J.Jeff.
So here's the thing about Kelsey is, I think if you are drafting 1-1 and you can't trade out of that position, that it's very likely that you're going to take Justin Jefferson, just because the upside that he has in that offense is incredible. Now, you could make a case to take Travis Kelsey, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were you, and I wasn't a big fan of, drafting Jefferson at 1-1 and I couldn't trade out, I would probably try to get something on the board prior to the draft with maybe someone down the road say, hey, draft me Kelsey. I'll kick you this, you kick me that. And, we'll see what we can do, because I really do think that he's going to pop off again this year. And especially in this offense, like we said, with Reese Rice, Moore, and Tony, the targets are going to be his. And granted, the schedule is a bit more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
They do play a decent amount of good defenses, but those first 3 games against Detroit, Jacksonville, and Chicago look meaty.
Minnesota jump off to a big start.
Minnesota again looks meaty, and then you go down to where the fantasy playoffs would be. Buffalo, they can definitely.
That's going to be a shootout.
Play with Buffalo. New England, that seems like a Kelsey game to me. Las Vegas, I think they're going
Las Vegas for your championship. That's kind of why you want Colts on your roster, Chiefs on your roster. Las Vegas in your championship week, you're going to put up some points.
And Kelsey's just a league dominator at some point.
He is.
But those games look really good, though, in the meat of the season for Rice and for Moore, just because they'll get their legs under them and they'll get, Juju had 88 targets last year, or 88 catches last year. Those 88
and
catches,
Sky Moore's vastly better athlete than
those
him.
88 catches need to go somewhere.
And I believe they're going to Sky Moore.
If they don't go to Kelsey, they need to go to Moore, Rice, or Tony. And it just feels like what we saw out of Moore, it just paints a better picture for Moore. And Pacheco, another year in the system, all of those targets that were McKinnon's, they could easily go to Pacheco.
Yeah, McKinnon is 31. I mean, we got to remember that.
I mean, those are the guys I would target if I were targeting Chiefs. I would actually stay away from Patrick Mahomes.
He's too expensive.
He's too expensive in the second round. If you can get him in the third round, I would think about it, particularly if coming around, you're looking at some second-tier level running backs, some second-tier level wide receivers, because the value of Mahomes at that point in time would be tremendous. But I wouldn't if I had the chance to take, even though I down-talked him the other day, if I had the chance to take Stevenson, if I had the chance to take Najee, if I had the chance to take Olave or Devonta Smith, I would take all of those guys over Mahomes just for positional advantage.
This is the thing. When you look at your first 5 rounds as just draft building strategy right now, you can only really use one of those picks as not a receiver or a running back. Said another way, it's very hard to make a successful team taking a quarterback and a tight end in the first 5 rounds. So I know there's a lot of people out there pushing for stacking Kelsey and Mahomes. It hurts your team way too much in the long run. Yeah, and to me, Mahomes is the one who unfortunately comes on the chopping block.
Well, and this is the other thing is that Mahomes in the second or third round, but you could potentially get Justin Herbert in the 5th or 6th round. And in the 5th or 6th round, there is a little bit of a dead spot where you're just kind of hitting and hoping on some wide receivers or some running backs that have potential to boom. But we have a certain idea about those top-notch superstars.
Mm-hmm.
And so Herbert, we're not so far off of Herbert being a top-tier selection.
To me, it makes sense.
We're not far off from seeing potentially Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts as being a number one quarterback here. And I think that those guys, even though Hurts and Allen are in the same tier as Mahomes, like statistically here, you can get those two guys a little bit, just a tad bit less expensive than Mahomes. But like I said, if Mahomes is sitting there and your choices are Mark Andrews and Breece Hall,
I'd take Mahomes.
As
long as I didn't already have a tight end on my roster, I'd take Mahomes. There's no doubt about that.
I would take him any day.
So he's the best player in football. Fantasy football does him a little dirty by the way they do the scoring. But let's face it, at the end of the day, Mahomes is there. These guys are winning that division again because it's what they do. And no one loves going to Arrowhead in the playoffs because it never is an easy place to win. So let's see it, guys. Kansas City's going to be an awesome watch this year, as always. And we'll watch them all year.